How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Play by Play podcast. I'm your host, Diego Gallegos. This is episode 39, where today we will be doing a full AFC West breakdown, preview, and predictions for this upcoming season. If you guys haven't yet, if you are watching this video on YouTube, go ahead. Please feel free to subscribe, leave a like on the video, share it with your friends so that we can get this podcast out to more people. And if you'd like, please leave a comment on your thoughts of the episode, what I should change, what I got right, what I got wrong, and what your predictions are for the AFC West next season. And if you have not already, please go ahead and follow us on all social medias on our TikTok, Instagram, and X/Twitter accounts. All of our ads will be in the description below. There, you will be able to find clips from the podcast. You will be able to see my take on breaking news. And on TikTok, we are doing things called Storybook Sundays, where we go back in NFL and NBA history and look back at some of the craziest stories. The TikTok is at official play-by-play. The Instagram is play-by-play_podcast. And the X/Twitter is play-by-play_pod0. Again, all of those ads will be in the description below. Please check it out. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get on to the AFC West. Now, this has been a division. This is a division that when you look at it has a lot of huge names involved in it. And looking back at the history of this division, it has been a division that has dominated the NFL, at least dominated the AFC for really the past decade. If we look at it, obviously, you look at the Chiefs that have been in the Super Bowl for the past couple of years. They have pretty much been in nearly every single AFC championship for the last 4 or 5 years. And going back throughout the decade, you obviously had the Denver Broncos, who were pretty dominant, making the Super Bowl in both 2013 and 2015. They were pretty much at the top of their game, the number 1 or number 2 seed every single year throughout the 2010s, having legendary battles with the New England Patriots. And even though neither of them were really Super Bowl contending teams, the Los Angeles Chargers, formerly the San Diego Chargers, were always a really, really solid winning team when they had Phillip Rivers. And the formerly known Oakland Raiders, now Las Vegas Raiders, were always a very, very tough team to win against on the road. Oakland is a very difficult place to win in. They have a very historic and very connected fan base that are full of people who look a little bit crazy. I'm not going to lie to you, Oakland, now Las Vegas fans. People who are very, very loud, make it very difficult to play against. Oakland is a rugged town, and it was always very, very difficult as a Broncos fan, always watching the Broncos go on the road. Oakland was always a very, very difficult place to go in and win a road game. And it is now a division that, like I said, has a lot of huge, huge names in it. Whether that is the coaching staffs, you have Andy Reid with the Chiefs, you have Jim Harbaugh now with the Los Angeles Chargers, you have Sean Payton with the Denver Broncos. Whether it is 2 out of the 4 teams having some of the top tier quarterbacks, it is a division that is going to be very, very exciting to look at this season. That is going to be filled of probably some of the best, most competitive games throughout the entire season. And once again, I believe that there will be a team from the AFC West that likely tops the AFC conference, that likely goes to the AFC Conference Championship, and that likely represents the AFC in the Super Bowl. I firmly believe that one of these 4 teams will make that happen. Now, of course, more teams are likely than others, but when you look at the top teams that I have in my prediction, which we'll go over in a second, I believe that at least 2 of my top teams will be in the AFC Conference Championship and likely will make the Super Bowl to represent the AFC. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. AFC West, way too early predictions for the 2024-2025 season. We start out with the Kansas City Chiefs at 14-3. You follow that up with the Los Angeles Chargers in second at 13-4. I have the Oakland Raiders at 5-12 in third place, and I have the Denver Broncos tying them at 5-12 in fourth. Now, just looking at each and one of these teams individually, going more in depth, we start off with the Kansas City Chiefs, who previously had an 11-6 season last year. They were ranked the ninth in total offense, second in total defense, which was very surprising because for this Kansas City Chiefs team before last season, it was a team that was very, very thin when it came defensively, especially in the pass rush game. They had normally a couple of good corners, but really outside of Chris Jones, they didn't really have a great pass rushing game. And they upgraded. They had the second least touchdowns allowed. They had the second most sacks in the league. It was a defense that really carried what was a struggling Kansas City Chiefs offense compared to what we had seen previously from them. And that's simply because Patrick Mahomes just did not have the weapons at receiver. You had Rashid Rice, you had Kadarius Toney, two guys that just were not the top tier targets that he had previously. And this year, I think, is going to be a lot different for them, which is the reason why I have them getting 3 more wins than last year. Because when you look at some of their key additions, they add Marquise Brown, you add Xavier Worthy. Those are 2 really big gadget players that are going to be able to make some huge plays downfield. And that's super important because Andy Reid is a very, very aggressive head coach. He loves going deep right out of the gate. He loves using Patrick Mahomes' arm. And they just did not have a reliable receiver that was going to be able to gain receptions down the field very often, that was even able to make holes in the defense going down the field like Tyreek Hill was able to. And now you have Xavier Worthy, the fastest 40-yard dash time in NFL history. Marquise Brown, a very similar speed. Rashid Rice is still on board. They still have McCole Hardman, who I still believe, as a fourth receiver, is definitely a lot more solid of a receiving core than they had previously. Isaiah Pacheco, another one of those gadget players. They just have so much quickness, so much athleticism on this team that is very impressive. And on the defensive side, they really didn't lose a lot. In the secondary, you still have Justin Reed. You still have Trent McDuffie in the secondary, which is going to make that deadly. Nick Bolton in the middle, which I think is going to be very important for them. Chris Jones, yes, he is aging, so we're going to have to see when that drop-off year is going to happen for them. But it is a Super Bowl team that has pretty much reloaded. They have gained talent rather than lose talent. Really, when I look at it, they really didn't lose anybody outside of Willie Gay at linebacker. It's going to be a little bit of a blow, but I think that they can cover those holes. They have the 14th easiest schedule in the league. Some of the notable opponents include the Ravens, Bengals, Falcons. Obviously, they play the Chargers, 49ers, Bills, Browns, Texans. And a lot of those teams are right out of the gate, the first 4 or 5 games. So it is going to be a little bit tough for them early on. I think that they're going to have struggles just because they are going to be playing some solid defenses. And I think that this offense, being a little bit newer than it was the previous year, is going to have to, get on the same page, going to have to build that chemistry that they don't have. So I think against teams like Baltimore, against teams like possibly San Francisco, you have Cleveland, against those tough defenses early on, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for them, but I think that they will be able to pull through in a lot of these close games. I don't think that the Falcons are going to be able to touch them with the defensive holes that they have. I think that the Chargers, while I think that they got a lot more talented, while I definitely like their coaching choices, and we'll get to them in a second, I prefer Kansas City's offense way more over them. I prefer their passing game way more over them, the weapons that they have. The Bengals, very, very similar. Obviously, Joe Burrow has been able to find holes into beating the Kansas City Chiefs, but I think that with their defense, is going to be a lot more difficult for Cincinnati. 49ers might edge them in the regular season. They seem to be just perform on a much higher level in the regular season, so could see edge them. But Browns, Texans, such like that, these are just teams that Kansas City has more experience over. It is a team that I think has a lot more offense capability than those teams. And I think for the most part over their division, they're going to dominate. I think that they sweep Oakland. I think that Denver, even though they lost once to Denver, they were dominating Denver before that. And with Denver's downgrades at some of their positions, especially at the quarterback position, I think they're going to start dominating them again. I think they sweep. As far as the Chargers, I could definitely see them splitting with them, maybe a home away type thing where the Chiefs win at home, the Chargers win at home. But other than that, the Chiefs should have a very, very easy time getting through, dominating this division, and seeing themselves at the top of the AFC once again. which brings us to the LA Chargers, who had a very huge increase on my board from last year. Obviously, they went 5-12 last year. It was not a great year for them last year. And when you look at who some of their key losses from, you may believe that it's not going to be another great year for them going forward again. I mean, they lost a lot of offensive weapons. You lose Keenan Allen, you lose Mike Williams, you lose Austin Eckler. It was a team that was already 18th in total offense. They were a pretty below average team when it came to the offensive side, 13th in the passing game. They were in the top half of the passing game, but you have to assume losing so many receiving options for Justin Herbert that that passing game is going to fall off. But we do have to remember that they now have Harbaugh. They now have a much more qualified head coach than Brandon Staley. I never agreed with many of the decisions that Staley did. I thought that he was weak. I thought that while he was a defensive coach, the defense was never the strong point of the team, and it shows them being the 28th total defensive team, the 30th worst passing defense in the NFL. Brandon Staley was not helping the defense at all. And while the Chargers did lose a lot of offensive weapons, I think that they also gained a lot of offensive weapons in places that may not be looked at as much for Justin Herbert. They obviously had a huge number 1 overall pick with the 5th overall pick in Joe Alt. That now gives them 2 potential all-pro tackles. You move Rashawn Slater over to right tackle. You plug Joe Alt into that left tackle. You now have likely the best young outside offensive line game in the league. They added Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. It was a stacked receiver class. I had McConkey going in the second round as well, just because I felt that the receiver class was so stacked. He ends up going to LA, and while he might not be a number 1 receiver type guy, just because he has had to deal with injury problems, I'm not sure at his size what his ability is going to be on the outside. He's going to be an incredible slot receiver. He is an incredible route runner. He's somebody that reminds me of who Jerry Jeudy was coming out of the 2020 draft, where he just had elite speed, elite route running. It's going to be somebody that is going to be able to sneak behind the defense and give Justin Herbert a target going down the field. They also added Junior Colson to their linebacking core, which was a huge hole for them this past season. They've added Denzel Perryman in the linebacker role as well. So now you have a core of Khalil Mack, Perryman, and Junior Colson, who, by the way, led Michigan in tackles this previous season. So it's going to be a team that is going to be a lot better at tackling. I still do not like their secondary very much. Really, the only notable guy is Derwin James in there, so that is a huge hole. But I think with them keeping Joey Bosa, with them bringing in Junior Colson, with that linebacker core being solidified once again, I think the defense is going to have a lot better time at pressuring the quarterback. They're going to make it a lot more difficult in the passing game for opposing quarterbacks. Like I said, you add all pro tackles. You have some solid receivers. You add McConkey. I think that Quentin Johnson is due for a breakout season, although he has had some struggles with dropping the ball. I think that he is there. And, I mean, they have some suitable running backs. Obviously, they're not all-star level running backs, but Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, they are both guys that could make electric plays at times. Gus Edwards, much more of a power back. J.K. Dobbins is going to be able to pass catch out of the backfield. And with them having these all-pro tackles, you could see them having a running attack to the outside. I think it's a team that, just looking at names, may not have the most prestigious names, but with Justin Herbert's talent, with Harbaugh's coaching experience, with the protection that he's going to have, I think that this is going to be a team that is going to be at the top of the AFC. They have the 5th easiest schedule in the league, so it is definitely very manageable for them to go out and win games. Really, the only notable opponents that they have is the opponents that they're facing in the AFC North. They have Browns, Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers. I can see them going over the Steelers and Browns. I think Bengals and Ravens, with their offensive capabilities, could be a little bit tougher. But again, they also face Atlanta. Atlanta has a horrible defense. Could see them going over there. Battles with the Chiefs, we're going to see how that has to go. That really just all depends on how much their poor secondary holds up to the Chiefs' gadget players. But I think that they can split with them. Broncos and Raiders, with the lack of quarterback play that those two teams are going to have, I could definitely see them sweeping both of them. So while the Chargers might not have the name value at quarterback, at head coach, at offensive line, at linebacker, you have some really great core guys that are going to be able to lead you. Colin Cowherd says it all the time. Really, the success to a team is a quarterback, a great offensive tackle, and a great linebacker, and a solid head coach. And they have Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, Khalil Mack, and now Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. So I think that they have the right guys in the right places that are just going to make things much easier for Justin Herbert going forward. And I believe that they could be successful. So again, previously they went 5-12. I have them upgrading all the way to 13-4. Sure, that might be a very, very steep addition to wins, and I understand that. Maybe not too realistic for them, but I think that they're going to have a much better season than they did last year. And then we move on to the struggle bus, to the strugglers in the division. That is the Oakland Raiders and the Denver Broncos. Going to start off with Oakland. Was a team that had a huge resurgence at the end of the year, and they're a team that I have my eye on just to see what the energy is like in the locker room, because you're now going to have Antonio Pierce in that locker room for a full entire season. It was clear that the players much preferred him to McDaniels. It was clear that he brought in really just a breath of fresh air. It seemed like players were much more happy with them. Max Crosby spoke out dozens of times on how much better the locker room energy was. So we're going to have to see how successful Pierce is going to be. As far as the roster goes, I'm not sure how much he really has to work with. We talked about those right places with the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm not sure what he has to work with in the right places with this Raiders team. Because when you look at some of the additions that they have, I think that they had great additions. You have Christian Wilkins plugging into the interior of that defensive line. It was definitely a huge, huge weak point for them. They improve on the 12th best passing defense, and I think having a much better pass rush than they did the previous year is going to upgrade that even more. You add Gardner Minshew, who is a veteran quarterback who I think is going to be solid, not great, but solid. We're going to have to see how that quarterback battle matches up with him and Aiden O'Connell. You add the dual tight end threat. You got Harrison Bryant. You add in Brock Bowers, who can obviously be a hybrid on the outside in the wide receiver position, which makes a deadly receiver duo in Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams for whoever quarterback starts. And they added Jackson Powers Johnson, which I thought was a huge pickup at 43rd overall, was a huge steal at 43rd overall. I had Jackson Powers Johnson going late in the first round. They get him early to mid-second. Interior offensive line was a huge, huge point for them. They added Jackson Powers Johnson. They added Andre James at center. And because they had lost Van Roten at guard, that was going to have to be a big one. But now they have the replacement. So now you have a very, very solid offensive line. You do not have the big names, the big players that the Chargers have, but you do have a very solid offensive line. You have Devontae Adams. You have Jacoby Myers, who had some bright points throughout last year's season. You add Brock Bowers. You have Michael Mayer, Harrison Bryant. So we're going to have to see how they really deal with the huge amount of tight end depth that they have over there. But what I'm obviously interested is this running attack, what they do at the running back position. Current starter is Zamir White. They have Alexander Madison backing him up, who had a couple of bright spots in Minnesota, but they lost Josh Jacobs. They lost a very electric playmaker. And we have seen in the past, when your running game is not working, it is devastating to your passing attack. Your offensive game becomes very one-sided, very predictable, and it becomes very, very easy to scheme against. And when you have guys such as Devontae Adams, who is basically getting double covered nearly every single game, they're going to have to find a way to open up the running game if they want to be successful offensively. But with Antonio Pierce being a defensive head coach, I'm not sure if he's going to have the ability to really do that. We're going to have to see how he really adjusts his schemes here, because he has the weapons. He has 3 tight ends. He has 2 solid wide receivers. He has a solid interior offensive line. He has the weapons to make this work. Sure, the quarterback is not the brightest of spots, but you have suitable guys. You don't have great guys, but you have average to above average guys in Minshew and O'Connell who could make things happen, who, if you just dumb things down, get short routes, 5 to 10 yard slat routes, in routes, you just make simplified plays, you could open up the field for them. You have the weapons. You have guys that are going to be able to gain bonus yardage for you off of these short routes. As far as the defense goes, like I mentioned, the pass rush is incredible. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Divine Diablo at outside linebacker. They have some great pass rushers in this lineup. Now, I'm not sure about the secondary when it comes to the secondary about this, just simply because of the depth that they have. I mean, they have Nate Dobbs at 2 cornerback positions right now on ESPN's depth chart online. So I'm not sure how huge their depth is going to be. Jack Jones on the opposite side of the cornerback list. And when you're going up against huge quarterbacks such as Justin Herbert, such as Patrick Mahomes, when you look at their schedule, you go against Lamar Jackson with the Ravens, Deshaun Watson with the Browns, Joe Burrow. You go up against Tua's passing game with the Dolphins. You go up against Kirk Cousins in the young offense in Atlanta. They're going to be tested with a lot of the top quarterbacks in the league right now. They have the 24th easiest schedule in the league. So it is going to be a difficult road for them. It is a defense that is going to have to step up majorly. And if they don't, a lot of that pressure is just going to hang on the weight of the offense, which, like we know, if you don't have a great quarterback, I'm not sure what the ceiling for this offense really is going to be. They have great weapons, but how much is that going to elevate? So really, the setback for the Raiders right now is just the prestige of their opponents, because they play such a difficult schedule that I'm just not sure that the level of quarterback that they have is going to be able to step up to the plate. But they have the weapons to do it. So it's going to be on the back of Antonio Pierce to elevate his quarterback and to put him into better positions. And he's going to have to really show his value as a defensive coach, making this pass rush work and upgrading this secondary and developing them. Then you finally ended off with the Denver Broncos at 5-12. They had previously gone 8-9. If you did not know, I'm a Denver Broncos fan. Some of the key additions for them include Brandon Jones. You had Bo Nix, Zach Wilson, both 2 quarterbacks. And I think that Denver had a solid draft, especially following the pick of Bo Nix. They drafted Jonah Ellis, who was a great pass rusher. And you add Bo Nix's right-hand man in Oregon in Troy Franklin. But I believe that the losses that they had were absolutely devastating. You obviously lose Russell Wilson. You're having to pay Russell Wilson's salary. Because you're paying Russell Wilson's salary, they had to let go of Justin Simmons, all-pro safety, one of the best safeties in the league. They lost Lloyd Cushenberry in the middle, one of the interior offensive linemen that was holding it down for him. He was very solid. And then you traded away Jerry Jeudy. Now, as far as Jerry Jeudy goes, the train had pretty much run out of track, right? There wasn't really that much going on. It was clear that Denver hadn't developed him, that he was not the player, the route runner that they believed he was going to be. So they got off of him. It was pretty much 4 lackluster years full of injury, full of disappointment. So they traded him to Cleveland. But it was a team that was 26 total offense. It was a team that was 24th passing offense. It was a team that was 29th ranked defense, 22nd passing defense. You lost big holes in your passing offense. You lost big holes in your passing defense with Justin Simmons. Now, don't get me wrong. Really like the signing of Brandon Jones. Solid veteran, very great in run support, is a very, very solid veteran safety that is going to be able to wrap up and tackle, which has been a weakness of Denver in the past, is their ability to tackle. But I think that the losses have really outweighed the additions. When you look at the fact that you're likely to have Bo Nix starting at the beginning of the season, sure, he's going to be running Sean Payton's offense to a T, but I'm not sure. While I am confident actually in some of the weapons that he has, I actually think that Denver's offense is solid. I don't think that they're going to have a great offense, don't think that they're going to have an awful one because you still have your number one receiver in Cortland Sutton. I think that Marvin Mims Jr. is going to have an absolute breakout season for them. He's going to get more targets. His speed is going to allow him to get much more yards after the catch. You add Troy Franklin, who I think is going to be a very, very big bright spot if he can get some playing time. And Denver also had some very solid receivers that emerged at the end of the season. You had Lil Jordan Humphrey and you had Brandon Johnson, who both played great alongside Jared Stidham, that elevated Jared Stidham. I think that Adam Trotman and Greg Dulcich, again, they're not huge names, but Trotman played very solid throughout the length of the season. It comes down to the offensive line. It comes down to the protection. And when you look at the fact that Bo Nix was one of the least sacked quarterbacks in college football the previous year, I'm just not confident enough in this offensive line. You now have Sam Mustafir in the middle of that at center. I think that Lloyd Cushenberry is tiers above him. Ben Powers, he was one of the weak points in the entire offensive line last season. Mike McGlinchey has still not improved as a pass blocker. I apologize. Is an incredible run blocker, but a terrible pass blocker. Garrett Bowles had a very solid season, likely had the best season of his career last year, but is getting older, has dealt with injury. The only real bright spot on this offensive line is Quinn Meinerz at right guard, who was a great right guard for them previous year. And when you look at the fact that, once again, this running attack is not impressive. You have Javonte Williams coming off of injury last year. He did not have a very impressive season coming off of injury. It was very, very average. Jaleel McLaughlin was much more of a pass-catching running back than he was a rushing running back. Samaje Perine is not somebody that is going to really light a spark. It is a Denver offense that I think looks to fall flat, which is a huge disappointment when you bring in somebody as offensively capable of Sean Payton. And it's going to be on Sean Payton now to take the quarterbacks that he has and, like we mentioned with Antonio Pierce, make it the easiest situation that he can. And if he gets Bo Nix as a starting quarterback, it's going to have to be that way. It is going to have to be getting the ball out in a second or less because he is going to have loads of pressure on him immediately. So Sean Payton better be looking towards players that can create throughout the screen, can get yards after catch off of a 5-yard slant, because Nix is going to have to get the ball out quick. And if he is to be successful, I don't believe that he is going to be able to be successful if he is getting sacked 40, 50, 60 times in his first year. It is going to derail his confidence and is going to stop all of the development that Denver was planning to have when they picked him at number 12. When you look at the defensive side of things, it is still very promising. And Denver has always been a very, very promising defense. And I think that you have a lot of great things here. You still keep a lot of the solid pass rushers that you have. You have DJ Jones. Like I said, they added Jonah Ellis to this. You have Jonathan Cooper. You have Baron Browning. Alex Singleton is in the middle, but you lose the main run support guy in Josie Jewell, who could also play a little bit of pass coverage. I think that the secondary is solid. I don't think it's great. You keep Pat Surtain. You added Brandon Jones. Caden Stearns and PJ Locke played great in run support at the strong safety position, so I think that they're going to be fine. But Denver still faces the huge problem that they've had for years, which is outside of Patrick Surtain, they really don't have somebody at that number 2 option on the cornerback side. And the Raiders, they have a plethora of offensive weapons. The Kansas City Chiefs, they have a plethora of offensive weapons. If we look at who Denver's plays, the Jets, plethora of offensive weapons. The Chargers have Ladd McConkey, not much there. Falcons have more offensive weapons than I can even name. Many of the offensive teams that Denver faces this season has more than just one receiver and is going to be on that number 2 quarterback to really step up. Levi Wallace, can he do that? Chris Abrams-James, who they drafted in the 4th round, I believe, can he be that? Do they move possibly PJ Locke to cornerback? I'm not sure how you fix that second cornerback spot. And it has been a cornerback spot that has gone absolutely fried for the past couple of years. They needed to patch that up. They did not. So I think that this Denver team is really going to look relatively similar to what we have seen the past couple of years. And that is super disappointing because, once again, it may not be the young, hopeful team that we had a couple of years with the likes of Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy. You had Cortland Sutton in there, Garrett Bowles at left tackle. But you still have a lot of very solid young guys in here. You now add Bo Nix, Quinn Minus is a bright spot. Cortland Sutton is great. Marvin Mims Jr. in the slot. You still have so much potential, and it is going to unfortunately continue to get wasted because it is a team that has just gone on to not be able to fill the same holes, the same issues that they've had years prior. The second quarterback spot, lack of pass rushing, the offensive line as a whole is terrible. The run game is not going to be consistent. It's a team that, once again, I think is going to have a very below average season and a lot of very tough and close games. And maybe Sean Payton can elevate that. We saw how he was able to elevate basically a very similar team to what we saw with Nathaniel Hackett in 2022. So maybe 5-12 is a little bit of a stretch. Maybe he can elevate us to 6-11, 7-10, around there. But it is set to be another very bad season in Denver, unfortunately. And that's all from me today, guys. That is all I have on the AFC West previews. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong. What are your predictions for the AFC West? Again, I have the Kansas City Chiefs at 14-3, the Chargers at 13-4, and both the Oakland Raiders and the Denver Broncos ending it at 3rd and 4th with 5-12. Let me know who you are most excited to see coming out of this division. And once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please, please, please feel free to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong. And please follow all of our social medias. The @ are all in the description. @official play-by-play for our TikTok, play-by-play_podcast for our Instagram, and X/Twitter is play-by-play_pod0. With that, I'm Diego Gallegos, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.